I'm not an expert on early childhood education, okay? I'm not some fucking authority on pedagogy, alright? I do, however, know something about shapes, clearly. In grad school, I took classes from some of the top geometric minds in the world. Courses about homolotopy, the Riemann metric system, fucking triple T talk, text, and tangent bundles. Some real intelligent shit. But if I'm teaching a baby about shapes, right, I don't need them to be fucking Euclid, right? I don't need them to, square the circle. I just want to be able to show them a shape and for them to correctly identify that shape. And what does that sound like? That's just a standard machine learning exercise. Teaching kids isn't rocket science. I mean, underneath the adorable pudgy cuteness, they're essentially neural nets. All you gotta do is show them a shape. If they get it right, they get a reward like a Cheerio. And if they get it wrong, you feed them something bad, I don't know, like a packing peanut. And that treat backpropagates through their net, so with enough examples, your convolutional kiddo will be distinguishing triangles from circles and the like. The roadblock to this method isn't with the kids, it's the data. There isn't an MNIST for shapes yet, so you can't just strap your kid into a chair in room 23 and flash shapes at them at 120 FPS, although that would be much more efficient. No, once you outgrow the abstract notions of shapes like drawings or paper cutouts, supervised learning can continue by leveraging the rest of the world as a dataset. Household objects, plant life, road signs, anything and everything has a shape, and these things, these data points, can be fed into your children's programming. What's the shape of this car wheel? What's the shape of this window? Cheerio for a right answer, packing peanut for a wrong answer. I like to bring 2 Ziploc baggies with me on walks and car trips, always tuning the weights and biases of their nets. They figure it out. But sometimes maybe your local dataset is getting stale. You can purchase supplemental data like expansion packs. There's this company called Priddy Books, and they have this series of touch and feel books where not only can you teach your kid basic concepts like shapes, colors, words, numbers, you get this extra tactile dimension to play around with. So this colors book, for example, in my opinion, a well-constructed data set. You have this picture of a leaf, right? And this leaf is unmistakably green. I knew without looking that leaves are green, so I'll give myself a Cheerio for that. Learning never stops. And not only that, but the stem and veins of the leaf are slightly raised, so that assists networks as well. And not all of these data sets are created equal though, and today I want to talk about a particularly egregious example, the shapes book. At best, this book is a waste of money, at worst an intentional disruption of a developing spatial awareness. Now the colors book, like I said, is fantastic. The examples are common everyday objects children might come into contact with, and their classification is unequivocal. For instance, if you wanted to present a child neural net with an example of a yellow object, what would you choose? Maybe a banana, right? The world's most popular fruit, one of the first solids you can introduce to babies. There's no confusion. The background is yellow, the banana is yellow, they're the same color. A banana is yellow, this is yellow. A color like brown, where there might be more artistic license with examples, the authors elect to go with a teddy bear. One of the most popular stuffed animals, it's the same hue as the background, indisputably brown. This shapes book though, how the fuck did this thing ever pass peer review? Let's play a role-playing game, okay? I'll give you a simple shape, and you can be the author and pick any 2 objects you want that have this shape. Now remember, you want these objects to be recognizable for the child and for there to be no ambiguity, but you can pick anything you want from all the objects in the observable universe. Your only job is to pick objects that a child will be able to attach a shape to. And afterwards, we can compare your choices with the choices of the authors. Okay, so let's start with a circle. Go ahead, pause the video, take as much time as you need to think of objects that are circles.
You're watching Scrabble on USA Network.
All right, you have your objects. Here is the first object these authors came up with. Coins. Not a bad start, actually. These coins are evidently circular. You could scale and transpose the example circle up top and have a perfect match. Maybe if I was being picky, one thing I could say is that coins are quickly fading out of modern society in favor of digital payments. But this book was written in 2008 when the US state quarter program was coming to an end, so perhaps coins were marginally more relevant back then. But unfortunately, identifying circle with coin is as pertinent as this book is going to get. It's all downhill from here. Their next identification of a circular everyday object is ball. And this is where the book starts to depart from planar geometry to its detriment. Because ball is by definition not circle. Its projection onto R2 is a circle, or rather a disk, and because we're reading a book, I guess in this submanifold space of the page it's technically correct, but children don't live in flatland, okay? They live in the real world with 3 or 10 spatial dimensions depending on who you ask. No one in real life is going to look at a basketball and say, yep, that's a circle. No, it's a fucking sphere, a well-defined mathematical shape. Now, you might reasonably argue that training infant neural nets on objects in 3 space is out of scope, especially if they haven't learned their 2-dimensional shapes yet. But you brought it there. You could have picked literally any circular object with 2 relevant dimensions. You could have picked a clock, a wheel, a DVD, a button, a plate. But no, you pick something that isn't even a fucking circle. But it only gets worse, because next we're talking about rectangles. Now, viewers at home, here's your opportunity to pause the video again and think of any 2 real-world objects that are rectangles. Okay, ready for this? Here is their first choice for an example of a rectangle. Like, I get it, okay? They're adhering to the touch and feel motif. The pieces are slightly raised off the page. It's pleasing to the touch. But look at these corners. This thing isn't even a polygon. The individual pieces are confounding variables. Puzzle isn't one of the first 10 objects I would have elected to represent rectangle. But this next one confirms the trash status of this book. One example of a rectangle in everyday life? Here you go. Fucking paints? Again, not even close to polygonal, but compared to the rest of this atrocity, that's peanuts. Look at this picture. What is the first thing your eyes are drawn to? Imagine you're a child fresh off reading the colors book. Would the first thing you notice not be these 6 brightly colored circles? And keep in mind, it says paints, not paint tray, paints. The white tray is not paints. The circular paints are the paints. There is fuck all that is rectangular about this abomination. And I mean, think about how out of pocket these authors are. You're telling me the best 2 examples of rectangular objects, the highest quality of examples, were puzzle and paints. Not door, not like window, not like book. You're reading a book. This is a rectangle, it's a book. The rest of this disease is arguably just as incompetent. Next is squares, which they again confuse with the 3-dimensional cube, going so far as even to identify a literal block as a square when its projection onto the page isn't even a quadrilateral. For triangle, they're dipping into conic sections, and then they consider the star to be one of the 5 most important shapes to teach your child. I would have picked something convex.